Everyone tells you to follow your passion, but I don't think that's where your calling begins. I think your calling begins somewhere much quieter. It begins with the things that have always come naturally to you, the things you've probably overlooked because they have never felt extraordinary. And if history teaches us anything, it's that women who became unforgettable rarely compete on someone else's strength. Somewhere along the way, we were all given the same advice: follow your passion. It sounds beautiful, and sometimes it is true. But for many people, passion feels frustratingly vague. What if you have five interests? What if nothing feels like a calling? What if you're waiting for certainty that never comes? Maybe we have been asking the wrong question. In Mastery, Robert Greene introduces the idea of a life's task, the work that seems to fit your natural inclinations, the thing you have been moving toward without even realizing it. He argues that mastery isn't achieved by chasing trends or status. It's achieved by aligning your work with who you naturally are. I love that idea, but I kept wondering, how do you actually discover it? Years later, I read another book, The Unfair Advantage. The authors introduced something called the Miles Framework. Miles being an acronym for five distinct categories of unfair advantage. It was a conceptual tool so that individuals can not only discover but audit their unfair advantages so that they can be used to stack in a deck of sort which is in favor of your own success. Now, if we get into each distinct unfair advantages, the M stands for money. This refers to the capital that you might currently have or even what you can easily raise from others. This sounds like the most obvious one of the all unfair advantages. People who have more money do end up having a lot of easier access to a lot of resources that other people just don't. I would suggest looking at the converse as well of this argument. If you have not had a lot, if you haven't had easier access to resources, that means that you have had to learn how to make a lot or the maximum that you can from the little that you have. That has made you more resourceful in a way because you have had to become that way out of necessity. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to survive. That can become an unfair advantage if you think about how you can use that as well. The I in the framework stands for two things: intelligence and insight. Intelligence could be intelligence quotient, which is the easiest way to ever measure somebody's intelligence, the most obvious one. But other than that, even social and emotional intelligence or creativity can be distinct types of unfair advantages in themselves. Creative people have better ideas that they can leverage. Socially intelligent people will end up having better networks that they can leverage for opportunities. So, all types of intelligence themselves can offer you distinct unfair advantages. Insight, on the other hand, is something that people end up not noticing quite a lot but can become a very strong unfair advantage. Insight is a deep or specific understanding of a problem or, frankly, anything that others might miss. Maybe it's something as simple as you are on your job a lot and you notice certain things about other people working on the same job. There's a specific problem they continuously encounter, but you ended up figuring out a solution because you saw a common pattern. Now, everyone in that profession might have that problem, And now that's something that maybe you can use for professional success. Maybe that's something that could become a business idea, for example. Insight is something that becomes more personal and more unique to you, because insight is often shaped by experiences that have been unique to you and have been personally experienced by you in a way that may not have been by a lot of other people. As a result, they might not share the same insights that you have had. So, uncovering a very unique insight can actually become a very strong advantage and a quite unfair one. Another one is location and luck, which is part of the L in the acronym. This is about being in the right place at the right time. What kind of location you're geographically and physically at obviously ends up in kind of informing or deciding what kind of opportunities will you have access to, or if you will have opportunities in abundance around you. That can actually skew luck in your favor, because if you have a lot of opportunities around, it becomes more easier to being open to them and having the right mindset to capitalize on them. The E in the framework is for education and expertise. Both have a very small difference but an important one. Education is for formal schooling. It could be from a prestigious institution, which in that case can help you signal more prestige as well, which can become another form of unfair advantage. It can also help you develop more sort of elite networks, as they say. And often, prestigious institutions end up becoming strong part of a lot of people's identities. So you can end up forming community in a way just by being part of an institution, even though you might not have attended that institution with that person. Just that shared identity can help you form a bigger community and open a lot of doors. Expertise, on the other hand, can be something that's self taught. It could be learned by doing. Technical expertise, especially, can just come from practicing. Technical expertise ends up becoming hard skills, which obviously are more easier to monetize as opportunities. That's something to think about. And finally, the S in the acronym stands for status. Status could be a personal brand, or if you want to simply understand it, it's just how others perceive you. It could be outer status, that could be what social standing you have. Maybe you are part of prestigious networks, as we discussed in the education part, or it could just be, through associations, who you know. Inner status, on the other hand, is just your internal confidence and self esteem, which influences how you carry, thus ends up influencing how other people perceive you, and thus becomes a part of your status. Now, one thing is clear after understanding all of these five advantages. All of us begin life with different advantages. Some may be obvious, some invisible, and suddenly Robert Greene's idea started to make sense to me. Maybe your calling isn't something you invent. Maybe it's something your advantages quietly point you toward. This is where I also think these two books come together. Robert Greene tells us to find our lifestyles. The unfair advantage tells us to recognize our advantages. But together, they reveal something even more interesting. Your calling often hides inside your advantage. Not because success is easy, but because certain kind of work allows your natural strengths to compound over time. To understand what this looks like, let's go back to Hollywood in the 1950s. At the time, the beauty ideal was unmistakable, glamorous, dramatic, overtly sensual. Imagine being a young actress who didn't naturally fit that mold. Petite, slender, soft spoken, graceful instead of glamorous. Audrey Hepburn could have spent her entire career trying to become someone else. She could have viewed every difference as something to fix. Instead, she embraced the qualities that already belonged to her: her elegance, her warmth, her expressive face, her quiet confidence. Those qualities weren't weaknesses, they were simply different from what everyone else was chasing. And because she leaned into them rather than competing on someone else's strengths, she created a kind of timelessness that still influences fashion, beauty, and culture decades later. That's what fascinates me. Audrey didn't win someone else's competition, she became impossible to compare. Most of us make the opposite mistake. We spend years trying to become better at things that were never meant to be our greatest strengths. We compare ourselves to people whose advantages are completely different from our own. And then we wonder why progress feels exhausting. Maybe the answer isn't to work harder, maybe it is to pay closer attention. Instead of asking, "What is my passion?" try asking these three questions. What feels unusually easy for me? What do people naturally come to me for? And what parts of myself have I been trying to hide because they seem too ordinary? Those answers might feel unimpressive. That's exactly the point. Your greatest advantage rarely feels extraordinary to you. It's simply who you've always been. Tonight, I want you to write down one thing you've always taken for granted about yourself. Maybe you're naturally calm in difficult situations. Maybe you're incredibly observant. Maybe you explain complicated ideas in a way that makes people feel understood. Don't ask whether it's impressive. Ask whether it's consistently true, because that's often where your advantage begins. I don't believe becoming your best self is about becoming someone entirely new. I think it's about recognizing the strength you've been carrying quietly all along and building a life that gives those strengths room to flourish. That's the philosophy behind the Femme Advantage. Every chapter will take timeless ideas from psychology, history, and great books, not to become someone else, but to better understand the woman we're already capable of becoming. I'll see you in the next chapter.